There is a strange moment that happens almost every day. Someone looks at you and asks, "How are you?" You smile before your heart has a chance to answer, "I'm fine." The words leave your mouth so easily that they almost sound true. They float through the air like they belong to someone else. The conversation moves on. The world keeps spinning. Nobody notices that a tiny part of you stayed silent. Have you ever noticed how we can carry an entire storm inside us while holding a perfectly steady umbrella? Maybe you've laughed the loudest at the table while secretly counting the minutes until you could be alone. Maybe you've replied to every message, gone to work, finished every task, smiled in every photograph, and still felt as though you were disappearing somewhere no one could see. It's strange. The people closest to us often know what coffee we drink, what music we play in the car, even how we like our eggs in the morning. But they may never know the weight we've been carrying for years. I wonder when we learned that surviving quietly was somehow stronger than asking for help. Because somewhere along the way, pretending became easier than explaining. And maybe that's why one simple question keeps following us through every stage of life. Why do we pretend we're okay? Picture the end of a long day. The front door closes behind you. The room is quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic fading into the night. You place your keys on the table in exactly the same spot as yesterday. Your shoes come off. Your shoulders finally drop. Nobody is watching anymore. For a few seconds, you just stand there. Not because you're tired, because you've spent the entire day holding yourself together. Sometimes the hardest performance isn't on a stage. It's in ordinary life. It's laughing at jokes when your mind feels heavy. It's answering emails while wondering why everything feels so empty. It's saying, "Don't worry about me," when you secretly wish someone would. Have you ever stared at your reflection while brushing your teeth and felt like you were looking at a stranger wearing your face? Everything looks normal. The mirror says you're here. Your heart quietly asks if you really are. Maybe you've stayed awake long after midnight, not because you couldn't sleep, but because the silence finally gave your thoughts permission to speak. The ticking clock becomes louder. The glow from your phone slowly fades. Outside, streetlights illuminate empty roads. Inside, memories begin walking through rooms you thought you'd locked years ago. Old conversations, unfinished dreams, the version of yourself you thought you would become. Sometimes tears don't come because you're strong. Sometimes they don't come because you've forgotten how to let them. So instead, you wake up the next morning, you put the mask back on, and somehow it fits perfectly. Maybe pretending doesn't begin with adulthood. Maybe it begins much earlier. The child falls down. They're told, "You're okay." The child cries. They're told, "Be brave." The child feels afraid. They're told, "There's nothing to worry about." Little by little, we begin collecting invisible masks. One for school, one for family, one for work, one for friends. Eventually, we become so good at changing faces that we forget which one is actually ours. It's like living in a house where every mirror has been covered. You know you're still inside. You just can't quite remember what you look like anymore. I wonder if that's why loneliness can exist even in crowded rooms. Because loneliness isn't always the absence of people. Sometimes it's the absence of being truly seen. Maybe you've sat at a dinner table surrounded by laughter while quietly wondering if anyone would notice if you simply stopped talking. Not forever, just long enough for someone to ask what was really wrong. But they didn't. Not because they didn't care, because your smile convinced them everything was fine. Have you ever noticed that we polish the outside of our lives the way people clean windows before guests arrive? The glass shines beautifully. No one sees the dust gathering in the corners. Social media makes this even easier. We photograph sunsets while hiding sleepless nights. We celebrate achievements while quietly grieving the dreams that never happened. We become curators of happiness, editors of reality, collectors of moments that look alive even when something inside us feels asleep. Sometimes I think our hearts are like old houses during winter. From the outside, warm lights glow through every window. Inside, a few rooms have grown cold because no one has entered them for years. We keep those doors closed, not because we're hiding monsters, but because we're afraid someone will see how empty they've become. Maybe pretending isn't about fooling other people at all. Maybe it's about protecting the fragile hope that if we keep walking long enough, the feeling will eventually catch up with the smile. Maybe tomorrow will be different. Maybe next week. Maybe after one more promotion, one more relationship, one more achievement, one more beginning. Yet somehow, the suitcase we're carrying never becomes lighter. We simply become stronger at pretending it weighs nothing. But what if the weight isn't asking to disappear? What if it's asking to be acknowledged? Imagine carrying a heavy backpack for years. At first, you notice every step. Then your shoulders adapt. Your back bends slightly. Eventually, the pain becomes so familiar that you mistake it for your normal posture. Until one day, someone gently says, "You don't have to carry that alone." And suddenly you realize something heartbreaking. The backpack was never locked. You simply forgot you could take it off. Maybe pretending we're okay isn't courage. Maybe it's exhaustion wearing courage's clothes. Because real courage isn't always standing tall. Sometimes it's allowing your voice to shake. Sometimes it's saying, "I'm not okay." Sometimes it's letting someone see the room inside your heart where the lights have been off for far too long. Have you ever noticed that cracks only become visible when light touches them? We spend so much energy hiding our broken places that we forget something beautiful. The crack isn't where we become less human. It's where another human being finally recognizes themselves in us. Maybe that's why the conversations we remember most aren't the perfect ones. They're the honest ones. The nights when someone whispered, "Me too." The afternoons when silence felt safer than pretending. The moments when two people stopped performing and simply existed together, for just a little while. Without masks, without applause, without needing to be okay. And maybe healing doesn't begin the day life gets easier. Maybe it begins the day pretending becomes more painful than telling the truth. Tomorrow, someone will probably ask how you're doing again. Maybe you'll smile. Maybe you'll still say, "I'm fine." Old habits don't disappear overnight. Neither do old fears. But perhaps something small will be different. Perhaps you'll remember that behind every smile you pass on the street, someone else may also be carrying an invisible backpack. Perhaps you'll choose kindness a little more often, patience a little longer, listening a little deeper. And perhaps, one day, when someone asks how you are, you'll pause. Not because you found the perfect answer, but because you're finally letting your heart speak before your smile does. Maybe that's where honesty begins. Not in dramatic confessions, but in quiet moments where we stop asking ourselves to perform. The world doesn't need perfect people pretending to be unbreakable. It needs ordinary people brave enough to be real. If this story felt familiar, maybe that's because the quiet battles we hide are shared by far more people than we ever imagine. None of us walks through life without carrying something invisible. And sometimes the greatest comfort is simply realizing we were never carrying it alone. So I'd love to ask you something. When was the last time someone asked if you were okay, and what did you wish you had said instead? If reflections like this speak to something you've always felt but never quite found words for, consider subscribing. This is a place where life's quietest questions become stories, and where the feelings most people hide are given room to breathe. Until next time, may your smile never have to speak louder than your heart.